Good evening, friends. We've seen what happened in America when one black American, George Floyd, his life was snuffed out by some policemen who suffocated him to death. The entire society in America, a very large number of people, blacks, whites, every kind of people came out to protest against what they feel is systematic injustice against blacks in American society. Even all the judges of the Washington State Supreme Court issued a strong statement saying that there has been systemic injustice meted out to black Americans in America through their system in society, and that this must stop now. In India, we have been seeing systemic injustice and discrimination against particularly our minorities, especially Muslims and Dalits. And these atrocities have increased substantially since this BJP government came to power in 2014. We are now seeing a phenomenon where this government, this party, its functionaries, and the media that it controls systematically spreads lies, hateful falsities about minorities, about Dalits, etc., with the result that atrocities against Dalits and Muslims in particular have increased enormously in our society in the last 6 years, especially in the last 6 years. We are today seeing the spectacle of not only people being lynched on the streets by others, sometimes by policemen themselves, but we are also seeing, especially Muslims, Dalits, and activists who stand up on behalf of Muslims and Dalits being victimized and lynched even on the social media. And this hate machine, which is run by the BJP's IT cell, amplified by several sections of the mainstream media, this is controlled by no other person than our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi himself. This has been written by Swati Chaturvedi in her book, I Am a Troll, who has said how Mr. Modi personally decides and gives instructions as to what kind of uh, messaging is to be done by the IT cell and amplified by this hate machine of the media as well as the social media. Now, unfortunately, this COVID crisis is being used also to amplify this kind of hate mongering and atrocities against Dalits and Muslims. Even coronavirus, this whole messaging that this is Corona jihad being spread by Muslims, deliberately being spread by Muslims, etc. This is part of a very well-designed narrative which this government, the BJP and its people have been spinning out, and its media have been spinning out. Unfortunately, the police is also acting, though in fact there was a very important judgment on police reforms in 2000 in 2006, 14 years ago, in which they ordered the government to put in place various systems in order to reduce the government's control over the police, to ensure that the police enforces the rule of law rather than functions as an instrument of the political executive for their political ends. But unfortunately, we have seen that that judgment has largely remained unimplemented even 14 years after that, with the result that we are seeing today the police being systematically used everywhere, where, especially where the BJP is in power, being used for political ends, and in fact to promote this narrative, victimize the minorities, in particular Muslims, victimize activists who stand up for them. And we are seeing this happening particularly in the case of the violence that took place in Delhi, where people like Kapil Mishra, who were seen on video instigating people to indulge in riots and violence, they are being let off. Policemen who are seen on video beating up people to death, they are not being charged. No action is being taken against them. The policemen who entered Jamia and beat up students even in the libraries, etc., nothing has been done to them. The goons who were allowed to enter Jawaharlal Nehru University under the before the eyes of the police there, nothing has been done to them despite their being seen on video. But innocent activists and protesters, peaceful protesters, who were protesting against this discriminatory Citizenship Amendment Act, they are being victimized. And other activists who supported them, they are being victimized. So, and unfortunately, even the judiciary in this country seems to have collapsed for the time being before such a fascist government. And they are not really doing their job of acting as the guardians of the Constitution and guardians of fundamental rights of the people. So it is now for us, for the people of this country, to take the reins into our own hands and to do what is required in order to correct this situation. It is not that we are totally helpless. There are many things that we can do. Firstly, we have to keep raising our voice against this injustice and build public opinion against the injustice uh, uh, to the Dalits and the minorities in this country. We have to spread the message that any atrocity, any injustice meted out to these people is an injustice to all, and it will result in the destruction of an orderly society. And it will, of course, it is resulting in great injustice to these people, but it will eventually cost all of us. We are all in the same boat together, in the boat of this society. And if injustice is practiced against any particular section of this society, it's an injustice against all of us. So we have to firstly continue to spread that message through the social media, through the internet media, personally, physically through protest demonstrations, etc. This COVID is, of course, preventing physical demonstrations to happen, but this will pass in the next 2-3 months. Secondly, we must counter this message of hate that is being promoted by these people by promoting our own message of love and importance of religious and cultural diversity in this country. We can use the social media and the internet media for this. Thirdly, we must raise our voice for police reforms, for judicial reforms, which should be happening, but unfortunately, which have not happened. We need to build movements and alliances among all kinds of similar people and similar organizations in this country. And we must seek accountability for all these people, especially police officers, etc., who are involved in these atrocities, or who are conducting the investigations like the investigations into the Delhi riots in a very, very dishonest, prejudicial manner. We have to realize that, you see, public opinion eventually matters. It is really public opinion which forced the Supreme Court to somewhat backtrack on the migrant workers issue. Initially, when PILs were filed before the Supreme Court took a very callous attitude and said that the government is doing whatever, we don't have to interfere at all. But when so many people, particularly retired judges, senior advocates, etc., wrote criticizing the Supreme Court very trenchantly about this, the Supreme Court was forced to reverse its stand, and the public opinion forced them to do that. So it is not that civil society cannot do anything. We must make this very clear, and we must take this message far and wide, that number one, Dalit lives, Muslim lives matter. An atrocity against any one of them, any section is an atrocity against all. We are all in the same boat together. Religious and cultural diversity is a benefit and a boon to our society. We are indeed fortunate to be a country where there is such great diversity of all kinds. So I hope that all of you will take this message forward. Thank you very much.